You're listening to CRM Audio, the Microsoft Power Platform Business Applications podcast. I'm Joel Lindstrom here with George Doubinski and Shawn Tabor. Gentlemen, how are you doing this morning?
Bopping my head to that song.
And I guess the lead stories, we're still here.
Yeah.
It's been a busy fall, but we're here. We're still here for you. So, George,
autumn.
Yes, autumn. That's right, because people don't fall in Australia. So, George,
There's nowhere to fall.
I saw the tip of the day about the inline code editor for Power Automate. Mm-hmm. It got some questions for us. So, what is this thing, and why did you build it?
I already got some flack from people about security for this thing that I built. And the reason I built it, I was playing around with Logic apps. I was testing something. I needed to get into Logic apps, and I found inline code in Logic apps. So basically, you put in some JavaScript, and it runs. And I thought, this is a really good idea. And I thought how we can do it in flows. So we ended up building a function which is literally one line long. We ended up, the sophisticated version is like 5 lines. It's an Azure function. It just sits there, waits for you to send inline JavaScript code to it. The advantage, why would you want to do it? It's something trivial like difference in months. I don't remember one of our little community members just put up some flow expression that calculates difference between 2 dates in months. And like it's 3 lines expression and my eyes bleed. Right. So in JavaScript, it's 2 lines, very readable even by any citizen. It just works. Things like adding business days, regular expressions. I don't recommend to write programs using that approach, right? But small calculations that take few lines of code, JavaScript code, that is either complex or not possible to do in Flow, it's a perfect use. And you can pass parameters. I go to the details. I don't go in YouTube video to the details, but we have on 365.training, we have, it's a 3-part small free training course that you can take. It's like about 15-20 minutes per episode, and it's like 3 of them. So I do talk about security. Thanks to a couple guys who pinged me on security and flagged it that sometimes it's just bad idea to pass parameters as is. So I work around that, kind of clean up a little bit. And the one thing that we kind of do better than Logic apps is that we allow Node.js modules. So we support import statement and require statements inside the function. It means that you can, for example, bring a module, like if you want to do some financial calculations, there's a good NPM module called amortize, right? So if you want to calculate loan and, interest and loan and things like that. So you do like require amortize, and after that, you just do calculations on loan, on interest, on principal payments and what's not. Just typical stuff you do in Excel. You're taking Excel for granted. Now you can do it. It's kind of in 2 lines of code. It's not a big deal. I think citizens can do it. It's much less complicated than expressions. So that's about it. So I don't know if you guys see the use of it.
Yes.
But it's definitely out there. It's really easy to put together. The function is very, very short. As admin, you do have control, so you control what modules you allow to bring in. You can put data loss protection policies against the connector. You can wrap it as custom connector. That's what I do in those kind of 3 modules training, Azure function, custom connector, and kind of putting it all together. So it does work. I already use it on a couple projects. Makes my life so much simpler because there are some things that are just horribly complicated to do inside Power Automate. It's just not suited for that.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think some kind of calculations or comparison operations where, I'll give you an example. The flow I built that said, what's your next birthday, taking the birthday date and today's date and then comparing it, that took multiple steps, multiple composed steps to get the end answer. And what I'm thinking, George, tell me if I'm wrong here, but I could potentially take your inline code editor and create maybe one step using that function that could do JavaScript to get the end answer that I wanted in one step. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Given a birthday, for example, given a birthday, you can return when is the next birthday given today's date, right?
Yeah, because you compare today's date to their birthday to make sure it's this year or next year.
No, you wouldn't even compare. There is a good library called Moment, which does all sort of date calculations. I'm sure there is a function there that would allow you to to approximate and find in one statement, one line would return you the date when the next birthday is. It's at most, if it doesn't exist, then you would compare it, and it's still like 1-2 lines of code. I'm sure it is.
And I'll tell you the reason I like that too is because each step in a flow is an API call. If it connects to CDS, each step in the flow is an API call, even if it's not touching CDS for that step. And so given the limits, you want to be as economical as possible, and it would also potentially make the flow faster by having fewer steps. No, it's still not probably lightning faster. But
it will be faster in certain circumstances, like looping. If you're doing looping and, adding numbers, definitely it's going to be much faster in JavaScript than in Flow. Saving money, I'd be very careful about it because remember, you're calling a function and you're paying for that function. So you may or may not save money. It could be a false economy, but the upside is you're not in the business bucket that Flow is, right? So you're not limited by number of runs. So your function, it's still going to be pennies. I'm not sure you're going to save any. Perhaps you're going to spend more, but you're going to pay only for what you use. So that's kind of going to be your advantage.
If you use it and it costs you a bunch of money, just send the bill to George.
I actually was thinking publish this function as a freebie, but I haven't decided exactly these dilemmas. Like, how do I restrict people? I would need to add some API key or something like this, how I would restrict people and to a certain number of calls. So ask them to chip in a little bit, like pay me $5 and use, unlimited use of that function. But it's so simple, this function, that I don't particularly see any value in actually putting it up there.
Yeah.
But one thing this would do, so someone who doesn't write script or code, while it would probably economize the steps, it would take that no code kind of thing away, right?
At least that part of it.
No code is you do know that no code is kind of a bit of a fallacy when it comes to those expressions, like difference in months. Yeah, you're telling me, yes, it's no code, but the expression is 3 lines long. How's that no code? It's just
a different kind of code.
It's expression. Yes, technically it's not a code, it's expression, but it doesn't make it any easier.
The difference is someone like me could write one where I can't write JavaScript.
You
could.
I bet you, what do you want me to bet you? That you will find that writing this one-liner JavaScript to calculate difference in months, you'll find it much easier to read, and at some point you will be comfortable in writing it rather than doing this expression. You are comfortable writing this expression only because someone digested it for you and gave it to you on a silver platter and said, this is the expression. I challenge you to write it yourself, create it yourself.
And I would say that Power Automate expressions, not the dynamic references to fields, but the expressions where you get in, like get the first record from an array. That's no more complicated than JavaScript. And I'm not a JavaScript expert, but I'm also not a flow expression expert either. I've just got enough examples I can look back on, and I've done certain ones enough. So the most common ones I come across, I know what to do. But but yeah, I'll definitely check that out. We'll put a link to the tip of the day inside the show notes.
What I've done, Shawn, what I also done in one of the modules, in this training modules, what I've done, I showed how to use Visual Studio Code, your local environment, to quickly create and test the script, and then copy paste it into a flow. When you're comfortable with what it does and the results, then you just copy paste, and it will be like 1 or 2 lines, so it's not a big deal. And you can always ask, look, you've got plenty of people, plenty of people who do the code. So you can always ask, hey, look, guys, how to calculate difference in months? And I'm just typing moment JavaScript difference between dates in months. And months difference, Stack Overflow, blah, 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 blah. Here we go. It is one-liner, and it says moment, bracket date, dot div, bracket another date, comma, months, comma, true. I don't know what the third one is, but what's the true is. But it basically says, give me the difference in months. Right. I'm sure you can calculate. Oh, true means give the fractional months. False means rounded. Okay. That's it. Okay. It's like
that is something.
Date 1 dot div, date 2, comma, and then days, months, years, whatever the difference is, right? So how it's easy. I'm sure it's much more readable, and I'm sure you can write with a little bit of practice. You can write.
And this is one of those things going back.
And keep in mind, I hate writing expressions. I hate them. So
okay, take a look.
I'm lazy in general, though, but I will actually take a look at this.
And this is one of those things going back to our flow people versus app people episode. Power Apps expressions, in my opinion, are better with these types of calculations than Power Automate is. Power Automate is much more limited in the kind of math functions you can do. And whereas Power Apps is more, like the difference in dates and months is easier to get in a single line where you have to do multiple steps with Power Automate. So yeah, it's good. But the point of taking away the no code aspect, I would view it kind of like it could be a citizen developer enablement thing, because if you need the difference in dates and months and multiple flows, you have your George or Andrew Butenko or somebody like that create a child flow that with that function in it that you then can call from your flows that the normal people are doing, that they don't have to get into expressions. They can just call it child flow.
Right. Absolutely.
Kind of like an assembly.
If you're doing like these operations on a daily basis, like it's so easy to create a specialized function. You use the function that I created as a template, and instead of executing random script, you execute a predefined script with predefined parameters. It takes literally half an hour for a dev to create a function, wrap it up, create a custom connector, and deliver it to you on a silver platter. So easy done. So use it as a template, and you're good.
Yeah.
Now, Joel, you've been poking around. I mean, Power Automate aside, you've been poking around, spending most of your life lately in Oakdale.
Yeah, I have. So it's
how does it stack up against the mighty CDS?
So the way that the background here is, our team has been working with Microsoft to build the template apps that are released with Oakdale. So there's 3 of them now. There's additional ones coming. But as part of that, we've gotten deep into the ins and outs of Oakdale. And so it's been an interesting experience, and having to adapt to the limitations in it. From the core maker experience, I love it. There's no letdown in performance or capability from the core maker capability. Now, one thing is they do have new controls. They call them hero controls at Microsoft. I don't know I think they're just calling them the controls, but they're designed to look and feel more like Teams. so that if you build an app from the Teams Maker experience, you automatically is responsive. It automatically recognizes the light mode or dark mode of Teams. There's parameters you can use to identify the channel and post tasks to Planner and things like that. So as far as the platform, I think it's rock solid. And I've already talking to customers who've been using SharePoint mainly because it's free or it's part of Office, encouraging them to do that and I got into a Twitter discussion with someone who was talking about the no cliffs message and saying, yeah, there's a bunch of cliffs. You build all these apps on SharePoint and then you want to do something, or you build it on CDS and like you said, you hit a wall and you need an Azure function to get around it. My argument was, well, isn't that good? There's a bridge on the cliff that you can use called an Azure function to extend it. And but the point being, if you use it for what it's good for, it's really good. And the ability to build these simple apps that grow into this. This is where I think it's key. Is I can recommend people build on that, because if they get to where they need more storage, more complex security, that type of thing, they don't have to start over. They can upgrade their Oakdale environment to a full CDS environment and keep on going. So yeah, I like it. There's limitations.
But once you upgrade it, do you still have the access to those apps in Teams, or does that go away?
Yeah, because here's the thing: is I can still put apps I built outside of Oakdale inside of Teams, and even you can use those Teams parameters I mentioned. You can use those in apps in the full Maker experience.
So bear with me. Like, let's take a simple scenario. What I'm trying to understand is kind of how you get over that bridge, over that cliff. So I start with something simple. Let's say time recording.
Yeah.
So I just want to record, time I spent on something. So very simple, like what I'm doing, when I started, when I ended, different, whatever, right? So very simple, very flat scenario. Perfect. Right, just recording time. The time goes by, sort of it grew up. People want more complexity. People want sophistication. So I can upgrade that to CDS environment, retain what I have. Great, I can continue to develop it. No limits, that's fine. But let's say a slightly different scenario. Let's say I already have, PSA installed. And people notice and say, oh, this is really cool app that you created to record time. Let's bridge it. Let's bring it into existing environment. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, there's not really a way to connect your Oakdale to a CDS environment. You can't do a data flow.
No, I didn't mean connecting.
Like
I meant to actually take the assets and kind of move it to a full environment.
No, there isn't right now. That's going to continue to mature. That's the one thing that I would say is right now there's no ALM story for me to take my Oakdale app and move it, but it's still preview. So again, I don't know the timetable for when things are. That is a big ask that's coming in, I know. So and that would be one thing that would hold me back from recommending for some apps. Other things are, you got to realize it has security, but it's simplified security. And anytime you get into scenarios where different groups need to be totally restricted from certain records, you basically have the owner of the team and the manager of the team. And you can leverage that in your app to, say, restrict something to just the owners. But if you need something beyond that, you need to go full CDS. The other thing is the storage. It's 2 gigs, but Oakdale databases take up 500 megabytes of that. So you've got 1.5 gigabytes of storage. And, so that in itself is going to limit the types of apps. So if you see people putting this in and, they're going to have 500,000 timesheets in a year, it's not a good fit for that.
How does it work between, let's say, within the teams, between different can you restrict it to a single channel or to a single team? How the publishing works between the teams?
So by default, it's for a single team. So if that database is per team. Now there's some other concepts that we're working on that will show some other things that aren't out yet. But so right now, so if you have a channel, it doesn't work in a private channel. And I think there's certain
nothing
types,
works in private channel.
Right. So, but what you can do, and
I don't work in private channels.
Right. So if you wanted to move it, though, say to have the app in a different channel, I can go to the Maker experience, the Power Apps app inside of Teams, and can open it up and say publish this to this other channel. And so you can move your app to a different channel. But that's something that I expect to see will be the one thing that I don't see getting a lot of attention right now is there's also a PVA light that is built into Oakdale. And so if you wanted to use Power Virtual Agent for, say, internal help desk or something, but you haven't wanted to spend the money or couldn't justify that for
the
help
only
desk.
answer being computer says no.
Yeah, so now you can do that and start using that as part of your team subscription. So that's something that
really?
I think once people realize that that's going to really increase the capabilities.
So now I can annoy you not only on Slack where I built the bot, I can annoy you on Teams as well. Brilliant. Now, the ultimate question is, so if Oakdale is simplified CDS or dumbed down CDS, whatever you call it, right? So citizen CDS, and Microsoft lists a citizen version of SharePoint, does it work? Does Oakdale work with Microsoft lists?
I don't know. I don't even have lists in my environment. I'm on Ring 1, so I've been wanting to look at them. And I've heard people say, why do we need both Microsoft lists and Oakdale? And I'll tell you why. It's competition. You look at all these at Google's and Amazon's offerings, it's Smart Sheets and other things like that, which are basically, and Monday.com. Those are list type of apps, and so that's where they serve different purposes. And I think lists are a great choice for a simple app. I mean, I built one last week internally because it wasn't a good fit for Oakdale, and we needed everybody to use it, and it worked great, but it didn't have the complexity of needing a relational database and needing some of the capabilities that Oakdale have that lists don't. I mean, I think, and this is just my opinion, but if you look at Microsoft has had SharePoint lists for years, but they've been tied to a SharePoint site, then all these upstart, Smart Sheets and other things come that are more list-based, and they realize, hey, we were doing this first, and so let's make this its own thing. So I think it's a good strategy. And what I like about it is it gets people away from making apps in SharePoint because they have to, because that's the only thing they have. They have options now. And so, I think it's great. And they talk to customers quite frequently who their citizens get started making apps, and they realize, oh, crud, we have things built on SharePoint lists that have full visibility to everybody who uses them, and they're storing secure data in them. So we really should do something different. So this gives them some other options.
Now, go ahead.
Shawn has a question.
Let me ask one question. So with the storage limitation, is the way to get, I don't want to say around it, but if you have different teams that need to use this Oakdale app, is the way around the storage limitation to publish copies of the app in different teams to give them individual databases?
Yes, if you had different teams or departments and you wanted this to be a departmental app and you didn't need the data all to come up together, then you could do that. But there is going to be the idea of cross team apps too, or organization apps. So again,
Shawn,
I wouldn't split it up into different silos.
What a good analogy I have for this? It's like, do you have supermarkets where you charge per bag? So when you...
Oh, yeah, we do.
Yeah, you do, right? So it's equivalent of, instead of paying for all the bags to take your grocery to your car, buying one bag and running with this one bag between the store and the car and offloading them into the boot, right? If you have more than one department that needs more than 2 gigs of data, seriously, it's so much easier. Just upgrade to CDS.
You need CDS.
Pay whatever, $15 a month, and go live your life. I mean, it's people trying to save money where they shouldn't be. They shouldn't even consider that as
right.
No, I agree. I just wanted to know, if there was an issue with that scenario, and what if that wasn't something that would even be possible.
Is there an admin interface? Like I can go in and kind of delete old records or something like this? What's the admin interface for CDS part?
It's the same. It's the same as regular CDS. If you go to the admin center, you see all your Oakdale environments there too, and so you can monitor their storage. You can you can go into you can actually pull it up from the environment selector on Power Automate too.
Oh, great!
So you could.
I'm sure there will be limitations with the connectors, right?
I think it will still work with like the COE starter kits and stuff like that too. It uses the same CDS connector. It uses the CDS current environment connector.
No, I meant if you start using premium connectors, that's a no-go in Oakdale, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it does open up a little bit more. Basically, any kind of API stuff is limited, with the Office license. But there are certain API-based things you can do, with this, and the other connectors do work. So you can connect to. You can connect to Salesforce. I know for a fact you can do that. You can connect to Planner. You can connect to third-party connectors.
Oh, I like Planner. I actually do like Planner, so that's good. That's good. So I can do some fancy stuff. Excellent.
Yeah, and
a couple
as
of things
I said,
you
can
Planner,
find the planner that's in the same channel as your team and make them work together.
That's now we're talking. Now, tell me, did you create a wine collection sample?
Unfortunately, no. I didn't do a CD collection either, so you'll have to build your own.
Oh, I'd have to. At least tell me Nancy's still around.
Yeah.
She's still around. Good. Now, we're all in agreement that nobody listens to our podcast, right?
Right.
No, people still do.
Oh, shush. Let me finish.
We publish them once every 3 months.
So, Joel, no one listens to our podcast. So now you can tell us what the real name is going to be. Not Project Oakdale, what it's going to be.
I think we're going to call it George. Everybody loves George.
George.
Nice.
It's actually, I was reading the history, how come, the salutation George, when they call a person George, like with the small g, not capital G, not by name, but like common name George. I think it goes back to the trains in 19th century. Somehow they ended up, I don't remember the full story, but somehow they ended up calling conductors in carriages George, and sort of evolved into kind of salutation, kind of informal.
I have never heard.
Probably degraded. I don't know.
George.
I don't care, but some people may find it offensive. So here you go. So let's call it George.
Well, and since no one listens to our podcast, the other thing that we have to call out is since our last episode, Joel has a beard. I think that has to be said.
Yeah,
me too. So it's
going for
he
get a head start on No Shave November.
Yeah, very nice.
I started it 3 months ago, and just shave every now and then. But yeah. The standards dropped. I think it's one of the.
It's great. You can wear anything during business meetings now. T-shirt doesn't matter.
Someone should come up with the app that kind of puts your shaved face on top of your kind of grumpy and
I think they have that on Snapchat.
You're talking about dog's ears and tongues and.
Well, no, you can make yourself look young. So
you mean I know you can make yourself look old. It shows like how old you're going to be when Oakdale gets a different name. But younger, okay, so it's kind of Botox, virtual Botox. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
So we have the Power Platform virtual conference coming up next week. Am I the only one that's getting a little tired of virtual conferences?
Yes.
I've done a bunch of them.
I'm tired of it as well. Absolutely tired of it.
I'm not tired because I'm not taking part in them. That's probably.
I'm doing a CBS Saturday this week, and I'm excited about it, but it just isn't the same as traveling somewhere and seeing people. It's just like doing a Zoom call.
Well, what I've realized is there is a mechanic in my head that the actual preparing to leave for the trip is a reminder to complete all the decks and stuff for the session. And if you don't have that, well, at least to me, I forget all about it. And then 2 days time, there's a session and I'm like, oh my God. So then I'm scrambling to get it done.
And then you're saying, hey, Joel, can you do this for me?
Yes, I do. And you come through like a champ.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to take a little break from them. I'm not saying I'll never do one again or anything, but I think I just need a little break from them just because I think, I've spoken at a bunch of them. I can't focus on a virtual conference presentation because I can't legitimately say I'm away, right? I guess I could block time off and say I'm away at a conference, but nobody would believe me because nobody's traveling anywhere.
Interesting that you mentioned. One thought I had about this conference, I'm saying that people try and play the same format, but in virtual environment. And you got fed up with it. Shawn got fed up with it. I didn't get fed up because I never participated in it. I got fed up on day one because I believe that it's the wrong format. So what needs to change is the delivery. Because as a presenter, I find it absolutely impossible for me to present on the same level of engagement as in real life, because I don't see the audience, I don't talk to audience, I can't communicate with the audience. Audience is not engaging, like Joel said. Audience is multitasking, they're doing something else, they're reading their emails. I cannot possibly engage with them. So that means I have to change the delivery. Presentation, classic presentation, just not working. People get fed up with it. You're not getting the same engagement. People saying, "Ooh, I had like 16 people in my session," and bragging about it. Yeah, sure. I had 150 people in my real life session. That's something I can talk about. But 16 people, really? I'm not spending my time to present to 16 people. Because it's just waste of my time and waste of time for those people, because I'm not going to be to the same level of standards when I present in person. So I think we need to find the way to engage people in a different way. And I'm trying to I'm doing a couple experiments with the video formats, using SharePoint, not PowerPoint, but a different presentation software that allows me to navigate in a different way. PowerPoint is linear. The other ways to present is dive into topics. It's linear, but with the branches. So there's so many things we can do, but we need to find an alternative media. We need to find an alternative delivery.
Yeah, I think there's certain things that I have seen people do that have been enjoyable and done it. One is Dux Raymond, one of the RDs. He turned me on this tool called Slido, which you may already know about, sli.do. And he uses it very, very interestingly, like to do a poll during his thing, to have people, share their thoughts and build a word cloud and make it more interactive. And I also think that, and again, this is something that we were experimenting with one of our internal groups, it is more engaging and feels more like a regular presentation if everybody turns their cameras on, if they can, because then you see their faces and they're more involved. In some of my projects, they say everybody has to turn their cameras on, which is kind of awkward for some people. but it does make a difference. For me, I'm just, again, it's kind of like, oh, I'm speaking in Singapore on this Saturday. I'm going to speak in Sweden. I seriously am speaking at the CDS Saturday for Sweden on Saturday, and it's great, and it's going to be a fun time, and lots of good people are there, and I've created a new presentation for it and everything. So I'm looking forward to doing that. But yeah, I think you're right, George, and I think we just need to do something different. To me, a virtual conference versus, hey, I'm just going to, if I said, hey, I'm going to be presenting about Oakdale next week or something, it's really is the same thing, right? And it might be, instead of using the conference construct to say, okay, you're going to a conference. No, you're just watching a webcast, right? Let's be a little bit more.
But I think to me the difference is my presentation style. I try to be more interactive with the audience that's there to, engage them, and it's very difficult to engage them on a virtual event, in my mind. In the manner that can cross different types of participants, right? You can do surveys, you can do, little kitschy games, those kind of things, but that's you're getting slices of that audience. Some people are just not going to respond to those kind of things. So, and then you have to balance it that you don't want to overload your presentation with all kinds of those things, because then you're losing the spirit of the content.
And that's not really different than what your wife and daughter do with their teaching, right? These days, so they're doing it remote.
Right. I mean, they literally have to. They literally have to come up with ways to separate. They can't talk all day. They have to separate it out into different ways to interact with the kids to keep them engaged. Like my wife and my daughter both have document cameras that they use so that they can have a literal text presented on screen and be interactive with it. So I don't know. We have to figure out a better way to convey the information, and I agree with George that the old way to do it just doesn't work virtually every time.
The biggest problem is there's no swag with virtual conferences, and the majority of my clothes came from conferences. And so with coming on to 9 months almost since we've been, or whenever it's been 6, 8 months, but really since the last in-person conference was last year, November, that I went to. So we're a year out. Mm-hmm. I might have to actually buy some clothes. And that's
so
basically a big deal for me.
The truth comes out. The real reason why Joel doesn't like virtual conferences.
Right. No swag.
But you don't need clothes on virtual conferences, so you don't have to. You don't need the swag. You do need swag for your torso, right?
Right.
But not below the belt. No.
Okay. I don't know.
On that disturbing thought, let's wrap it up.
All right. Thanks, gentlemen.